I need to share my screen. I'm gonna share, I guess I'll just share the browser. Okay. Because I'm not using anything else. Okay. So yeah, there's the browser. I'm going to be kind of switching between windows. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. I should hear like a little icon or just like start talking and I should hear that. Um, but yeah, I might not be looking at the Discord window as I'm going over it. So yeah, today we're going to get started with our three.js project. In the past, this project has been something that I've just done for like a week or two, and we just kind of make like a little scene. But since we're starting it kind of earlier in the semester than usual, we could like add more to it. We could spend a little bit more time on it. So I think we'll spend a few weeks on it, and then depending on what you guys feel like, if it's something you want to keep working with, we can keep doing it, or we can move on to another project. Um, but yeah, let's go over to the browser. And so we're going to get into glitch again in a second, but one of the things we need to do to be able to develop with three.js is actually have access to the library. So we're going to look at three.js a bit, and then we're going to get the library to bring over to glitch. So I think we looked at this website last time. This is the three.js website, three.js.org. And I really like their website. It's very well set up. I'm going to put a link into the class chat for you guys if you want to click on that, or you can just type it in. The thing I really like about it is they have really good documentation. So if you click on here, they have a bunch of different tutorials, and then they have references to everything you can do. And then they also have really nice examples, and the examples always have links to code. And so even though it's a quite complex library, it makes it easier to get started than it might otherwise be. But yeah, it's basically just a 3D engine for the web. It's a bit similar to P5, which you guys probably used in MMP 210, where it's really just about rendering graphics on a canvas inside of a web browser. And P5 actually does 3D stuff. You may or may not have looked at the 3D features of P5, but three.js is really like a very robust 3D library that has constant development. Like they're always releasing new versions and adding new features, and it really does a lot of cool stuff. So I use it in my work a fair amount. It's a very powerful library, and it gets lots of updates and stuff. And it's also open source and free to use. So if you really like it, you can make suggestions or contribute things to it to make it grow. So it's a cool library. So let's look at a couple examples. I'm going to choose some stuff I haven't seen before. This one looks new to me. I think we looked at like the portfolio example with the car last time, and forget what else we looked at. But anyway, let's just take a look at this. Oh wow, this is almost like a metaverse something or something, a private sports club in New Cairo. Okay. I thought this was going to be like a game or something, but I think it's like a weird. I just want to walk around. Okay, so if I move my mouse, it moves the character, and if I hold the mouse, they walk. So I have to kind of move, show them what direction to go in, and then click to walk. And this is very typical of a three.js scene in some ways, where it's very simple materials, so it's not really realistic looking. It's more cartoony kind of primary colors. But there's no shadows actually. Oh, my character has a shadow. So there's using some shadows. Oh, and that star has a shadow. Oh yeah, I guess there's a lot of shadows. Whoa. But there's a lot of simple shapes, simple geometries, because that makes it easier to run in the browser. But yeah, this is pretty cool. So I guess this is just like a virtual tour of a sports club that maybe actually exists, which is kind of fun. Cool. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's see. This looks kind of interesting. I don't know what that is. Inkbot's 3D comic. A real-time 3D comic that updates often. Scroll up to read the story. Drag sideways to move the camera. Aim and release to capture hidden bonuses. Oh, cool. So it's like 2D art, but it's like layered in 3D, so I can like move it around. Inkbots. Oh no, I guess they are 3D meshes. That's cool. That's pretty cool. So it's like a 3D scene and it's got text on top of it. And it kind of animates, but I can also move it around. This is pretty cool. It wouldn't be actually that hard to make something like this. I mean, it definitely is like, there's a lot of details in here that would be hard to get right, but the basic mechanism is like pretty simple actually. It's cool. Wonder how they do must use an outliner thing. Let me see. I'm gonna look at the code for this real quick. Use source. Um, it's being kind of slow. Okay, maybe we'll do this later. Okay. Anyway, that's a couple.
Professor,
Yeah,
this second column, fourth row. See, that one looks like it's inverted colors and stuff. Very vibrant there.
second
Second
column.
column,
Uh-huh.
fourth row, fourth row.
Oh. Okay, let's look at this and then we'll continue. Oh, this is for an aquarium? That's cool. Oh, wait, maybe it's a band called aquarium? I don't really know what's going on. Let's see.
Is your scroller in the button with the mouse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. That's cool.
Предыдущие и последующие следуют друг за другом. Бытие и небытие. Я не знал, что этот поезд в огне, и нам не на что больше жать. Этот
That's cool. So it's kind of like a virtual tour of this band's like music and albums and stuff. That's pretty cool. That one would be hard to make. But yeah, that was cool. Okay, so what we're gonna do today is just like kind of do the basic getting started. And so that's actually in the documentation, just getting started creating a scene. This is a pretty good way to just like start making stuff. So this is what we're gonna go over, and I'm gonna spend a little bit of time kind of explaining the code and how everything works. But this is a good place to get started. One thing that we need, obviously we need to create a project, but we also need the library. So this is a little bit like P5. When you create a P5 project, in order for the P5 stuff to work, you need a copy of the P5 library. And so same thing for three.js. And so they have a link here to a recent build of three.js. Um, One thing with three.js is that it updates a lot, so you always want to make sure to have the most recent version, which is always here. But once we download this, if they publish something new, it's not going to be the most recent version. So that's something to be aware of. Like the library will always work, but they just publish new versions that have more features essentially. So if you don't get the newest version, it's not necessarily going to break anything, but you may not know you may not have access to the most recent examples. But yeah, so this is the library. It's quite a big file. So one thing that I actually like to do is get the minified version of the library. So if I go to three.js and I just type in three.min.js, it's the same thing, but it just takes out all the spaces and returns. So it's all the same text, but it's just a smaller file. So that's what I usually do just to make it a little bit faster to upload and download stuff. And so we need to put a copy of this into our glitch project, and we can actually just like link to here because it's always there. Or we can download and put it into the glitch project. So there's different reasons why you might want to do either one. Like if since we're already online in glitch, it doesn't really necessarily make that much sense to like grab another library and
But
upload
the
it.
link should make sure that it's always updated if you put a link.
Yeah, if you put a link, it'll always be updated. So that's one advantage there. But then you're always also relying on this server being up, which it will be most of the time. But if it ever goes down, that would be an issue. The other time it's an issue is if you're developing locally on your computer and you don't have Wi-Fi, then you wouldn't be able to load the library. So we're not going to experience that because we're going to be using Glitch, but that's just something to kind of be aware of. So I'm going to go over both ways of adding it, but either one is usually pretty much fine. So I'll put a link to this in the chat in the voice channel. And you can download that on your computer. If you're in the browser, it's a little bit different on Windows and Mac. On Windows, I think on Mac you can just hit Command S to save it. I think on Windows, if I do that, it's going to do something weird, but I'm going to try it and just see. So yeah, I want it to be a JavaScript file. So I just hit Control S to save. I think you can also go to File or to the menu. Is there a save here? No, there's not. Anyway, I'm just going to hit Control S to save. And it's just a JavaScript file. It looks fine. So I'm going to save that. And so that's in my downloads folder now. Yeah. Okay. So I can upload that or I can just link here. Okay. So now I'm going to go over to Glitch and what I'm going to do before I'm going to take a little bit of a pause and go over a couple things, and then we're going to put our library in here. So for Glitch, I'm going to click on my username to find my recent projects, and I have this MMP 310 three.js demo. That's what I'm going to be working on. So I can click on this, but it'll take me to the main page. What I want to do is, oh, it won't let me go straight to edit. So let's just click on this. And so it takes me to this like splash page for the project. And what I want to do is click on Edit Project. And that brings me to the actual code part. And I haven't been able to find a very satisfying way to increase the font size on here. So I'm just going to just zoom in on my screen. It's going to look kind of goofy, but it'll be good enough. Okay, so one thing I want to do to get started, I usually do this is look in my terminal and just check my Git status. And so we talked a little bit about Git last week. I'm going to keep just introducing little pieces of Git as we move on through the project. So I'm going to go to the terminal first before I make any changes. And so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to increase my screen size. So hopefully that'll make it easier for you guys to read and see on the video. Okay, so I'm in the terminal. And I'm just going to review some commands. So I can hit clear. So I just type clear and hit enter to clear the terminal. I can do ls to list what's inside of my directory. I can type pwd to check what directory I'm in. And then what I want to do is check the status of my Git project. So I'm on the main branch and there's nothing to commit. There's no working directory, or the working directory is clean. And now I want to do git log and see what I've done previously. Let's see, this is from Wednesday, August 31st. So that was like last week. I don't see my message on here though. Why does it just say checkpoint? Um, duh, 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 duh. Hmm. Okay, so Glitch is doing some stuff in here. I may want to delete some of this stuff eventually, but let's see, did I add this or did it add itself? So it says author glitch, checkpoint script. Okay, whatever. So I hit Q to get out of the log dialog box. And so what I want to do now, I have this like demo little thing that I made where if we go to script.js, I just like wrote a bunch of different stuff, and I'm not actually going to use any of this, but I don't necessarily want it to disappear forever. So what I'm going to do is something called creating a branch. And when I create a branch in Git, essentially what I'm doing is adding like a different version of my project that I can kind of go back and forth between. And so it can get very complicated, but just as a really quick example, I'm just going to do a little quick drawing on here. Let me get my pen tool up. Okay. Oh, actually, you guys aren't going to be able to see this, so I need to change my stream to my whole screen. So I'm going to stream screen one. Okay. So now you'll be able to see it. If it looks weird or you don't see it, just let me know. Okay. So when we're working in Git, usually we have like a main branch. Sometimes it's called the master branch by default. Technically, we're supposed to be moving on from that terminology, but I guess Glitch hasn't. But I may change the branch name eventually. Anyway, oh, that's too big. Let's see. How do I change let's do this one. Okay. Okay, so normally when I make a commit, it has like some big long name like ABCD 120 blah blah blah. And that's called a hash, and that basically just like lets me know this is like a screenshot of like a snapshot of my code. And then if I make some changes, let's just call this commit A for short. And this is my main branch. So if I make some changes and I'm happy with them, I might make another commit and say that's commit B. And then I make some more changes and that's commit C. And then at a certain point, I may say like, I have some stuff on here and I want to try something, but I'm not sure if it's, if I'm going to use it long term. So that's when I can make a new branch. And so I might make a new branch and call it like the test branch. And I may put something here like, this is uh, my, I don't know, some code that I just want to test out. And so while I'm testing it out, this is like a different thing. So let's call it D. Let's just keep going. And then I might test some more stuff and call this commit E and test some more stuff. And this would be commit F. And meanwhile, while I'm testing stuff, I might be making other changes on my main branch that are actually like going live to my software, to my website or my application or my game, whatever I'm working on. So over here, I might have some other commits. So I might have like, let's call this D1 or something like that. And maybe these will be D2, E2, F2, something like that. And then I make another commit. This one is like E1 or whatever. And then let's make it F1. And at a certain point, let's say it's F2, my test branch is a success. And I'm like, okay, this worked. And I want to put it into production on my main branch. And so what I would do, there's a few different ways to do this. And we're probably actually not going to get to this for a while, but just to show what the point of this is, I would make a new commit over here. And let's call this G. And it just happens to be that these are both F, but that's just, a coincidence. So let's call this G. And what G does is it takes F1 and F2 and it adds them together. And Git is really smart. It'll look at all the code that I added here and all the code that I added here, and it'll look through and it'll say like, well, actually, line 21 on script dot .js has an error. You have one thing here and one thing here, and they don't work together. And it'll make me go through and say like, oh, okay, this one is the one to use, so put that into G1. And it'll go through and it'll make sure everything fits together, and then it'll make a new commit, and then this branch is over. And Git can get pretty crazy because you can have as many branches as you want. But that's the basic idea, that you can be having testing or other types of things that you're doing while maintaining one base of code. Um, and so I'm just going to make a branch here because I want to keep my little example that I did of syntax, but it's not something that I'm going to keep in my main production branch. So what I'm going to do, if I type in git branch, it's going to show me I only have one branch. And so I'm going to make a new branch. And there's a special way to do this. I hit git checkout, which is how I check out different branches. But if I don't have the branch yet, I use a special keyword -b, and then I just give the branch a name. So I'm going to call this my syntax example. So now if I type in git branch, now I have this syntax example branch. And so I may do more stuff with syntax examples, but in general, probably what I'm going to do is mainly just work on my three.js stuff. And so now that this syntax example branch exists, it'll always stay where this was. So I'm actually using it in kind of an unconventional way, which is basically what I'm doing is I'm saying, here's like my main branch, and that's A, and I'm about to add some three.js stuff in B. So this is where I'm going to put my three.js stuff. But I am going to delete everything in my script from A, and I don't necessarily want that to disappear forever. So I'm going to create this branch for syntax, and this is going to be A1 or A2 or whatever you want to call it. And that branch is just going to stay there. I'm going to keep developing on my three.js branch and doing different stuff. But if I ever want to see that syntax example, I can just check out this branch and it'll be there. So let's see an example of that, how that actually works. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go git check out master. So that's my main branch. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and update this because people don't use master anymore. It's considered to be, you know, not, a word that has sort of a uh, uh,
That's what Adobe did in, I think it was in,
sorry.
the same thing did with Adobe. It used to call it master one of the pages in I
Yeah.
forgot the name, and now it's parent instead.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the naming conventions for these kinds of things are changing to be a little bit more modern. So what I actually like to use is the trunk. So I'm going to say git checkout -b trunk. And this will have everything that's in the master branch, but we'll just stop using the master branch. And we can actually delete it. I'll do that in a second. And the reason I like to use trunk is because it's like the trunk of the tree is the main branch, and then the branches are the branches. So that's why I use trunk. So anyway, if I'm on the trunk, I'm going to close my terminal for a second. I'm going to go into here. This is my script.js. I'm going to delete everything. And I'm just going to put a new comment that says three.js demo. Okay. So I'm going to start with my three.js demo. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my terminal. And I'm going to say git status. And it says modified script.js. Okay. So I'm on the trunk, and I'm going to say git diff. And this will show me the difference between the file that I have and the file that I used to have. So you can see like it started with a comment. So that first line is the same, the slash, but then everything else after that is red, meaning it got deleted. So all of this red stuff got deleted. And then there at the bottom, the green stuff, that's what's new. So I can see what the difference is, and I can say, okay, that's good. I'm ready to do this. So I'm going to say git add, and I only have one changed file, so I'm going to use git add dot to add everything in that directory. I'm going to do git status again. What? Okay, it says on branch trunk, nothing to commit. Huh, I didn't commit anything. Something weird is going on with this. Is it like automating? Yeah, it just made a commit for me. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, I need to learn more about glitch because that's a really weird. So it actually made that commit for me without me asking it to, which is not really what I wanted to do. I wonder if there are some settings that I could do to change that. Whoops. Let's go to settings. No. Okay, I'm gonna have to do a little more research on this. Anyway, so Glitch actually made the commit for me, which is a little weird, but I can still demonstrate what I wanted to demonstrate, which is this. When I make the window a little bit smaller, I'm gonna say git check out syntax dash example, and it should, oh, it doesn't do anything. What the? Okay, let's go to index. Okay, git. Okay, I'm on the syntax example. Why doesn't it? Oh my God, sorry. Obviously I need to test stuff in Glitch and not just on my own computer. Okay, so it doesn't have that commit. Oh boy. Okay, sorry about this, guys. I don't know what's going on. It seems to be automating some stuff, but I wasn't aware that it did that, and I was testing all of this stuff on my own computer, just kind of assuming that Glitch worked normally, but it looks like it doesn't. Anyway, I'm going to spend some time figuring out what's going on here later. For now, let's just actually get into our three.js stuff. So sorry about that. I'm going to go back to the trunk branch, but anyway, at least you can see how to make a branch and how to move between branches. But we can't actually see what a branch does because something weird is going on. So let's go back here and just get back to three.js. So we have our script. And we need to attach our three.js. So as I mentioned, there's a couple ways to do this. So we can actually upload the file. So I can go to Files and go to Upload a File. And I saved the three.js to my Downloads folder. So there it is, three.min.js. I can click Open. And now I have three.min.js here. And you can see all the code is right there. And so I can reference it kind of like locally. So I can go to index.html and add in a script tag here. I'm going to delete a lot of this crap as well, but that's where I would do this. So yeah, actually, let's delete all this stuff in the index as well. And let's get the index from our example. So I'm going to go back to the creating a scene, getting started example from three.js. And they actually provide some HTML for us here. So I'm just going to start with that. It's a little bit simpler than what we have in our glitch project. So I'm going to copy all of this HTML that they wrote for us. I'm just going to hit Control C and go back to the index.html inside glitch and paste that in here. And so notice that what they have written is script source is JS/3JS. So the way that they have this set up is they assume that your 3JS file is inside of another folder. So we don't necessarily have to do it that way, but if we want to match their setup, I can just add a folder here. Wait, I don't want to add a file. How do I add a folder? Oh, it only lets me, okay, what if I just say js/ and then add this file? Oh, it won't let me do that. Okay, so let's say js/app.js and add this. Okay, now we have a JS folder. And let's move our three.js inside of here. It won't let me do that either. Okay, so let's delete this copy. And then we'll go to the folder and add file to folder, upload a file, and add 3 in there. Okay, that didn't work. Huh. Maybe I can rename it. What if I do js/3. There we go. Okay, so I guess I have to use the naming conventions to do this. So that's actually easier in some ways. Okay, so now we have now we have a JS folder, but we also need to match, this is three.min.js. Okay, so now we have the script added in correctly. So as we mentioned earlier, another way to do this is just to use this external link. So I could do the same thing. I could copy the script tag, and if I don't want to like have to download and paste the three.js stuff, I can just go ahead and paste that external link in here. Whoops. Let me copy it again. And that should work the same way. As I mentioned, there's some downsides to doing it that way. If you're offline for some reason, or if the three.js website is down or something like that, it won't work. But most of the time it will work. I tend to like to keep everything in the same place. So I tend to use a local file like this. But there's nothing really wrong with using a file like this.
Can I just use both, like, or would that make problems? If I
Actually,
put
that's
them
a good
both.
question. You do not want to use both because the second one will overwrite the first one, and that won't really matter in most cases. But if they're different, it'll create problems. So I'm just going to comment this one out, but I'll leave it there, just so you guys know it's there. And one thing we can see if this works, I'm going to go ahead and preview this. So I'm going to open the preview window, and I'm going to open up my console over here. So on Windows, I just hit Control Shift J. On Mac, you can do, I think Command Alt J is what opens it. Or you can just go to right click on the window and go to Inspect and go to Console. And so now if I type in 3, there's my object. That's the three.js object, and that contains everything that is used in 3. So if we open this up, there's a ton of stuff in here. But like for example, like a bone is for like a animation skeleton. Box geometry is to make a 3D box. Like all of this stuff in here does different things in our 3D scene. And so we can see the library was loaded successfully since 3 exists inside of this console. So there's some differences between the different ways that 3 is developed, and I'll try to go over those as we kind of arrive at them. But yeah, we're just going to be using this big three.js object for access to everything. Okay, so we have our script attached. Now we actually have to write our own code. So the way the three.js is set up, they want you to write the script inside the HTML document, which is fine, but I tend to like to write my script on its own page. So I'm going to delete this comment here, and I'm just going to reattach our script that already exists inside Glitch. And so to do that, I'm just going to put source equals script.js. And so now I'll be able to write code inside my script.js, and that will run over in our preview. So if I go to script.js, let's just try that. I'm going to console.log hello world. And now if I reload my app, we should see that log. There we go. So now our script is running. And so now we can actually write some three.js stuff in here. So I'm going to put a link to this demo so that we have that, so we know what we're getting this stuff from. And so now we're going to get started. One more tangent before we actually do write our code is I just want to show you guys the three.js editor, because one of the things that you'll find as you start to work in 3D is sometimes things don't like look exactly how you think they should, and it can be confusing, especially if you've never worked in 3D before. And one thing that is really helpful is the three.js editor. So you can make stuff in the editor without using code and see if it looks like what you think it should look like. So to get there, you just go to the main three.js page and go to the editor page. And this is really nice because it just shows you everything that you can actually do with the code in a with a GUI interface. So this is like a basic sketch, and you can see there's like this 3D plane. And if I click on the mouse and drag around, it changes the perspective on the plane. There's like a little gizmo down here that actually shows me where I am. So there's the z-axis, x-axis, and y-axis. And if I click on any one of those, it aligns my perspective to the axis. And then I can also like drag around, and it shows me kind of how my perspective is shifting. And so, yeah, that's really important thing when you're developing in 3D that's different from 2D. So let's talk about that for just a second. So I'm going to put my view in the top. Well, actually, let's put it in the side view. Okay. So if you look at my little gizmo down here, you can see Y is pointing up, X is pointing to the right, and Z is pointing directly at us. When we work in 3D, this is kind of like the convention, how it usually works. Some software do these accesses differently, but this is generally how it works. And the main difference between 3D and 2D environments is this implied perspective, which can be hard to get used to. So I'm going to try to give a little example of this. So I'm going to get my pen out. So when we develop with P5 or Photoshop or 2D, we have like our computer screen. Let's say it's like this, and this is just a 2D surface. So this is 2D. There's a width, there's a height, and there's an implied viewer or an implied perspective here. So really, if we imagine our computer screen is like this, our implied viewer is us sitting just looking directly at the screen. Okay, so that's why we can represent things in 2D and they kind of look real because they're on a 2D screen. What 3JS and other 3D software do is they impose a 3D perspective on the 2D environment. So we're still obviously working. Our screen has not like developed, a third dimension. It's still 2D. So what we're doing is we're imitating a change of this perspective. So this plane is still here, but we're imagining this perspective might be like up here, or it might be farther back, or it might be down here. Or if we're looking from a top view, here's our computer and here's us, we might be moving to the right and looking from over here, or moving to the left and looking from over here. Here's our eyeballs. And so a lot of what three.js does the computational work that's required to determine how big something should be or small or what the angle is. So, if we're drawing a cube, let's imagine this is our screen space here. And actually, let me draw two different versions of this. So let's imagine this is our 2D screen here. And this is our top view here. Okay, and so here we're looking at this. If we're going to draw a cube and it's right here, it may look like this, right? But if we move closer, then the cube is going to get bigger. And if we move farther away, the cube is going to get smaller. Okay, that's just how stuff works in real life. And so if we're trying to recreate 3 dimensions of real life, then we have to change the perspective. And so normally, the way that we express that is with we have the x-axis is pointing left and right, the y-axis is pointing up and down, and then we have this new axis, which is the z-axis, which is pointing like directly at us. Okay, so the z-axis here is pointing towards the viewer. And so x is positive to the right and negative to the left, y is positive up and negative down, and z is positive as it moves towards us and negative as it moves away from us. And so this is obviously fake, like the computer is not moving, the perspective is not real, but we are using math to determine, if we move closer, objects get bigger. If we move farther away, objects get smaller. If we turn to the right, or if we move up and down, so like, we have our cube, right? If we move up, then we're going to be able to see the top of the cube. So the computer has to figure out how much of the top of the cube do we see versus the front plane of the cube. So that's like if we're, looking straight versus looking down. If we're looking from the bottom, then we would see like a little bit of the bottom of the cube and the front face of the cube. If we were looking from the right, we'd start to see the corner of the cube. So eventually we'd start to see all, 3 sides of this cube. So that's really most of what three.js is doing, is just like changing our perspective on the geometry of the scene. And so when we're in the editor, we can do that with just using the mouse and with these gizmos down here. So yeah, we can also look at like the camera. You can see the camera has all these different uh, uh, position and rotation and scale data. So it's really convenient to like play around with this stuff. Like I can change the position of the camera using this data or just like typing it directly in here. Um, and I can pan the camera. You can see those numbers moving. I'm just hitting the right mouse button and then dragging up and down and left and right. I can pan that way. And then I can scroll in and out of the 3D scene using the scroll wheel. And you can see these numbers, they're kind of small over here, but you can see them updating as I do that. So you can also set those numbers. And then there's this scene object, which does the same thing where we start to like collect everything together. You can also see the geometry and the material. We'll get into what those things are in a minute. There's also some information about the project and some different settings on here. And I'll go over a little bit more things that you can do in the editor in a later lesson. But there's a lot of stuff we can do here. You can add geometry, you can add objects, you can add animations, and you can test how things look. And so that can be really helpful because sometimes it's hard to know what's going on in a 3D scene. Okay, so now we're almost ready to actually write some code. So let's go back to our creating a scene. And so we're going to start here creating a scene, and we're just going to start writing some code right here. So yeah, there's a lot. I feel like I've already been talking for a long time. How long have we been? Oh yeah, I've been going for a while. I'm going to stop the recording and start a new one, uh, just so I'll have one that starts with the actual coding. So I'm going to click stop.